Bonjour tout le monde. C'est un grand plaisir d'être ici à Kigali avec la ministre Joly et le haut-commissaire Goodale. It's an important time to be gathering with fellow Commonwealth countries here in Rwanda to talk about the challenges facing the world. This morning I started with an event on climate change and how important it is for all of us to continue to stand united in responding to the pressures that small island developing states and others are facing with climate change. Then we got into an event with His Royal Highness and the President of Rwanda on sustainable financing, on the role that the private sector can and must play in countering not just the challenges around climate, but also the opportunities for growth, for investment, for creating economic possibilities for the Global South and for members of the Commonwealth all around the world. One of the themes that we're going to continue to talk about here is going to be the challenges facing the world, from climate change to the outcomes of the pandemic, but also the destabilization that Russia's illegal and illegitimate war in Ukraine is causing on economies, on supply chains, inflationary pressures both at home and around the world, but also pressures on fuel and specifically on food. On sait qu'au niveau de l'alimentation, le monde est en train de faire face à d'énormes défis, tout à cause de l'invasion injuste de la Russie, de l'Ukraine. C'est pour ça que le Canada a investi autour de 500 millions de dollars déjà dans le programme d'alimentation mondiale, dans l'ONU, dans différents enjeux depuis le début de l'année. Since the beginning of the year, Canada's invested about $500 million in aid for the World Food Programme, for UNICEF, for other UN agencies to try and counter this food crisis that is entirely caused by Russia's illegal and illegitimate actions. And I'm happy to announce an additional $250 million that Canada is going to be putting forward towards the UN, towards the World Food Programme, to help immediately do more on this crisis. On annonce aujourd'hui 250 millions de dollars additionnels pour contrer la crise alimentaire mondiale. On sait qu'il reste encore plus à faire, mais on va être là pour continuer d'aider. D'ailleurs, le ministre Sajjan va être en Allemagne vendredi pour une conférence sur l'alimentation mondiale et le travail que nous devons faire. I want to thank Minister Sajjan for his work on bringing together solutions to this global food crisis and highlight the work he's going to be doing on Friday in Germany to continue these conversations with partners and allies around the world. C'est un moment où on fait face à énormément de défis dans le monde. Et c'est important donc de pouvoir se rassembler, comme je l'ai fait il y a 2 semaines avec les pays de l'Amérique du Sud, dans ce voyage-ci avec les pays africains, de l'Asie, d'ailleurs des Caraïbes, pour justement contrer ces défis que nous, on reconnaît chez nous avec l'inflation, avec les coûts de la vie, mais aussi ces impacts qu'on a sur les gens à travers le monde. Le Canada a un rôle important à jouer. The things we're discussing here are problems that are not just being felt by Canadians, but being felt around the world. And that's why it's important for us to get together, gather, and deal with it on the ground here, but as we look towards the G7 meeting in Germany and the NATO meeting in Spain in the coming days.
Prime Minister, I wanted to start with a question about the controversy around Brenda Lucki and the revelations of the Nova Scotia Mass Casualty Commission. Did your office or any other office pressure Commissioner Lucki or negotiate with Commissioner Lucki to release specific information about those killings to help advance gun legislation? Would those conversations have been appropriate, and do you still have confidence in the Commissioner to lead the RCMP?
Absolutely not on the pressure. We did not put any undue influence or pressure. It is extremely important to highlight that it is only the RCMP, it is only police that determine what and when to release information. The Commissioner's statement, the Minister's statement were very clear on that, and yes, I still very much have confidence in Commissioner Lucki. I will highlight, however, that when the worst mass shooting in Canada's history happened, we had a lot of questions. Canadians had a lot of questions. And I got regular briefings on what we knew, what we didn't know, and those answers continue to come out even as the public inquiry is ongoing, so families can actually learn what happened, and we will continue to take responsible action.
In French, please. Sir.
Tout d'abord, jamais on ne voudrait ou on a causé de l'interférence sur des enquêtes ou sur des processus que la police elle-même doit décider quoi partager et quand. Oui, on avait énormément de questions. Et j'ai eu des briefings de façon régulière, mais comme la commissaire elle-même a dit, comme le ministre l'a dit, on a toujours respecté toutes les règles et c'est important de le faire. Mais oui, on avait des questions sur comment ça s'est passé, qu'est-ce qui s'est passé, comme tous les Canadiens d'ailleurs. C'est pour ça que c'est important d'avoir une enquête publique qui va rapporter toutes ces informations-là aux Canadiens.
Prime Minister, you were supposed to meet today bilaterally with the President of Rwanda. We understand that bilateral meeting has been postponed. But there have been and continue to be long-standing concerns among human rights groups about Rwanda's record. And you visited today and had a very visceral look at the genocide memorial. What is it that you're going to say to the President of Rwanda about human rights, and how can you hold him accountable?
Well, I think what happened here in Rwanda 28 years ago resonates not only every day for Rwandans, but resonates around the world as well as something that we all have to be vigilant on. We all have to be there to make sure the road never gets walked again anywhere else in the world. And when we have conversations with other leaders, whether it be here in Rwanda or elsewhere, the issue of human rights and democracy always comes up. Canada always has things to talk about on that, and I will, as always, continue to be frank and direct about how we need to make sure that we're continuing to support everyone's rights. The Commonwealth is a place where there are people who and leaders who don't go as far as we'd like on human rights. The number of Caribbean friends of ours, for example, who still criminalize LGBT rights and aren't stepping forward enough. Rwanda is taking better strides on that than many of the other partners. So every time we sit down with any leader, we will bring up, because Canadians expect us to, because it's a role that we play, we'll bring up the work still to do on standing up for everyone's rights. And we will always remember the horror that happened here in Rwanda as something we have to make sure never happens again anywhere else.
Est-ce que c'est possible de répéter en français, s'il vous plaît?
Partout où je vais, quand je rencontre n'importe quel chef d'État, je souligne toujours mes préoccupations par rapport aux droits humains. On sait que le Commonwealth rassemble différents pays qui sont à différents niveaux. Quand on parle de respect de la liberté d'expression, respect des droits LGBT, par exemple, le Rwanda va mieux que bien d'autres en termes de droits pour les LGBT, la communauté LGBT, mais nous allons toujours souligner ces défis-là. Et quand je vais m'asseoir avec le président Kagame demain, je vais souligner, comme je souligne toujours, les endroits où on a plus de travail à faire. Mais on ne peut pas venir au Rwanda sans réfléchir de façon viscérale et profonde à ce qui s'est passé ici il y a 28 ans et les leçons qui résonnent pas juste aujourd'hui, ici à Kigali, mais partout dans le monde pour savoir comment il faut apprendre de cette horreur et s'assurer qu'on est toujours là pour défendre les droits de tous et chacun.
Vous venez d'annoncer 250 millions de dollars pour aider à la sécurité alimentaire et à la famine en Afrique. Comment est-ce que vous espérez que ce soit suffisant pour lutter contre des décennies d'investissements russes en Afrique? Comment est-ce que vous espérez que ça va changer les choses ici?
Tout d'abord, on va séparer les différents aspects. Le Canada investit depuis longtemps en tant que partenaire pour aider le programme d'alimentation mondial. On a fait des dons autour d'un demi-milliard déjà depuis le début de l'année. C'est un 250 millions supplémentaires pour contrer cette crise actuelle extrêmement pertinente. Mais oui, on reconnaît très bien, et nos alliés et nos amis ici au Commonwealth reconnaissent très bien la part de la Russie dans cette dynamique-là. Et nous allons directement parler du fait que c'est la désinformation russe, par exemple, qu'il y a des sanctions sur la nourriture. Il y a une crise alimentaire mondiale à cause non seulement de l'invasion de l'Ukraine par la Russie, mais le bombardement récent de la Russie contre du grain en Ukraine, qui servirait très bien à nourrir des gens partout dans le monde, le blocage du port d'Odessa par la Russie qui empêche le grain de se rendre en Afrique, au Moyen-Orient, ailleurs. La Russie a une grande part de responsabilité. C'est certainement un sujet dont on va parler beaucoup pendant cette rencontre du Commonwealth. Canada has always stepped up on global food crises. We've been long-standing partners for the World Food Program. We've donated about $500 million already this year to help counter food insecurity in the world. And we're announcing an extra $250 million as well that will make a real difference right now. But of course, there's more to do. Russia is responsible for the global food crisis we're facing right now. The illegal invasion of Ukraine, the choice to bomb grain silos in Ukraine over the past couple of days, the continued blockade of the port of Odessa by Russian ships to prevent grain from getting out to the Middle East, to Africa, to elsewhere around the world, are real preoccupations for all of us here. We know that the geopolitical situation is difficult, and yes, of the 54 Commonwealth countries, 9 of them abstained from the vote condemning Russia. But not one of them voted with Russia on that. People are very well aware of the role that Russia is playing in global instability right now, and that's certainly going to be a topic of conversation that we have tomorrow.
David Aiken, Global News. Good afternoon. I'd like to come back to Commissioner Luckey. Commissioner Luckey, people have testified, and she's admitted, made comments directing her subordinates to take some communications action based on some political considerations, and whether or not your government knew about it. Is it appropriate for the RCMP commissioner to be directing investigators to take some actions simply based on her assessment of some political imperatives? Is that appropriate?
The commissioner spoke to this in her statement. We continue to have support, have confidence in the commissioner. Ultimately, as we know, police make the determination on what information to release and when.
Okay, Prime Minister, it's Kevin Gallagher, CTV National News. You did say you're going to bring up human rights concerns with Paul Kagame. The Human Rights Watch put out a very specific list of things that they'd like to see leaders here at the Commonwealth bring up with Mr. Kagame. What are you specifically going to say in terms of the allegations of human rights violations here?
Part of the conversation that we have around the Commonwealth is on how we can all stand up for the values that unite us and move forward in real ways to promote democracy and opportunities for all. It means standing up for climate change, investing and working together. And it also means making sure our democracies are strong and that we're there to support each other and there to move the bar forward on human rights. We will, of course, take careful looks in every conversation at the challenges facing various countries and look for ways that Canada can help, because that's part of the responsibility of being a Commonwealth nation, not just condemning and pointing things out, which of course we will do as necessary, but also being there to provide solutions, to provide support, to strengthen institutions, to move forward in ways that actually make a difference in the lives of people in countries across the Commonwealth and around the world.
Prime Minister, sorry, behind the camcorder here. A federal unit that tracks foreign interference, the Rapid Response Mechanism Canada, says that Chinese Communist Party was involved in efforts to discourage Canadians of Chinese descent from voting for Conservatives in the last election. And so I'm wondering, did you know? Should the government be releasing reports like that during an election? And what responsibility does the government have to release that information, even when it doesn't necessarily benefit them?
Over the past number of years, we've taken significant steps towards countering foreign interference in our elections process. One of the things we do during an election is we've stood up a committee of senior public servants, independent, to make sure that if there is foreign interference that is impacting on the election, that gets dealt with, and they make decisions about whether it's made public in the moment or whether it's shared in other ways. These are things that we have to trust in our institutions on. I think Canada and Canadians are quite proud of our institutions and of our democracy. We continue to have faith in our institutions like Elections Canada because they are the pillars of the stability and the prosperity of a country like Canada, and countries around the world look to Canada's institutions as models and examples for how they can strengthen their own democracies. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.